Hey, what's up? Jason here from Unity3D.college. So a couple days ago, I sent out an email to my list just offering to do some code reviews and record them, just put them up online. So I've personally seen a big variety of quality and code reviews. Sometimes they're great and they really help people out. Most of the time they pretty much suck though, and they just talk about one specific little thing or nitpick a couple little things and never really get to the bigger stuff. So I'm going to try to be closer to the first one with a good code review, but we'll see how it ends up. Anyway, I wanted to start with this project. Vladimir sent this in, and I just thought it was a cool little game, and it was fun, and it seemed like a good way to start this off. And he mentioned in the email that he's a technical artist, not a programmer. And it shows. Like, the art is pretty nice. I like the look. I like the feel of the game. You play as a ball. You jump around. You get these other balls. They're lums. And they follow you around. You have to get all of them. Then there's these no gravity zones like this, which I thought was really cool. Just kind of like floating around. Or you click to basically add some force in. You can click and hold to add a little bit more force. Oop, there we go. So let's see if I can stop sucking at this. I'll show you a little bit of the game, a little bit of what he's got going on here, and then we'll just take a quick look at the code and see if we can at least get a couple good tips to help improve things a little bit. Okay, let's see. Can I get up there? Apparently not. Apparently I'm pretty bad at this. Okay, there we go. Grab that piece, and nice. The little wall bounced out of the way. I like that. Or slid out of the way. Okay, and let's see if I can get up in here. So right about here. Oh, close. My aim is terrible. But I think you kind of get a sense of what the game is. So you go grab these points and then get to the end. And I think here, I'm not sure if I'm supposed to climb up. I think some event was supposed to happen and actually finish the game. So cool game, fun stuff. It looks nice. Let's take a look at some of the code. So the first thing I want to look at is the ball control script. Now this is for the actual ball, like the player's controlled character. And let's see, right now it's certainly not the cleanest thing. It's not obnoxiously large, but the formatting and lack of spacing makes it really, really hard to read. So first thing I'm going to do, that I always do, is hold down Control K, Control D, and just kind of clean up that formatting, remove extra using statements that we're not using, and then take a closer look. So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21 member variables on this class. Just a relatively large number, especially for something as simple as this. And I get the sense just at first glance that some of this stuff should probably be pulled into a separate class. And this section right here alone kind of gives the idea. The fact that there's a comment and there's a whole section of parameters for a specific subset of this thing or part of it, and it's not even really for the ball, it's for those other little orbs that are following you. These should be probably pulled off into a separate class, maybe another component or just a another class that's attached to this game object. And I'm guessing that these public ones, let's see, let's take a look at lum distance. Shift F12 and lum parameters update. It's doing something. It's checking to see if it hit one in a raycast, I guess. Again, this is showing two problems. One, I'm not sure that these really belong in ball control because updating parameters for things that are following the ball doesn't really make sense in ball control. It seems like a separate thing. But two, this also is just a confusing method because I don't know what lum parameters update really means. Like, why are there parameters that need to be updated? What are those parameters that need to be updated? Well, it'd be two good questions that should be probably filled out in the name of the method. So let's take a real quick look. So this is setting a position offset, and it's setting a position offset, and is doing anything else. It's going through lum slots and holders, and then there's a delayed ray point, which is I don't know what that is either. It's hard to say. Let's see. Let's search for all references to delayed ray point. And look here. Delayed. Let's go to definition. It's some lum parameter. I don't. Let's see. Let's take another quick look and see if we can figure out what it is. So it's lerping from here to there. Okay, I think this is something for moving it, or yeah, moving the ray that it's doing. So this is really some stuff that, yeah, this should definitely be handled in that lum object or another class that really handles this. This entire update should be moved out of there and renamed to be a little bit more explicit, because this really looks like the whole goal of this thing is to update the lum position offsets. So I'd probably just rename this like update lum position offsets, just to make it a little bit more obvious. So now I know, hey, okay, that's what this is actually trying to do. Now let's go back up. One thing that really stood out to me in this was the casing. And again, I know I said that a lot of times bad reviews just kind of focus on little things like this, but I don't think of casing in here as a minor thing. I think it's a relatively big thing, and it should probably be fixed up. So there are a couple issues here. First off, everything is semi-randomly cased. Some things that are private are Pascal case like this. Some things that are private are short RBs. Sometimes they're camel case. Sometimes they're camel case starting with this. This part I kind of understand. Just trying to say that this is the reference to the thing on this object. I would probably just rename these though. Get rid of the word this and just name them lum holder or whatever. And same with the animator. I'm just gonna fix those real quick. There we go. But more importantly, the private things should, if we're just following some basic standards, should always be camel case. If it's private, make it camel case. Starts lower letter, big letter on every word after that. If it's public, it should be Pascal case. And it should probably be a property, not a field. Now, the reason for that is a lot of these things, let's see, let's look at Fuze by time. Fuze by time is read, let's see, only in ball control. There's actually no reason for this to be public at all. Let's look at the code again. The editor, and let's select the player ball. And I'm guessing this field is just showing up here. So what was it, Fuze length? Yeah, so we go back into code here. Oh, no, it's Fuze by time. Let's take another look. So is there a Fuze by time? Where was that? Oh, hold on. Oh, sorry, this one's private. Ah, getting myself mixed up here. So anyway, this should just be a lowercase f. See, I got a little bit mixed up because of the casing. That's exactly the problem. This thing was private, but it was cased wrong, so my brain implicitly just kind of went to, oh, this is public, why is it public? Now let's take a look at these ones. So we've got a couple particle system references. I'm going to hit Shift F12. I'm guessing these are here just so they can be updated in the editor, right? So this is constant fuse particles and burst fuse particles. Let's take another quick look. So yeah, these should just be private. We don't need these being publicly accessible. So in this case, I'll just change these over to be private and add the serialized field attribute. Just like that, and then rename these to be actually, not cursed, burst, to be camel case so that they match with what a private variable should be. And give that just a second. Yeah, and these are both, are they just both referencing that same particle? They were. They're both referencing this, the same particle system anyway. So I'll just reapply that real quick. And I assume this is a prefab, so we'll apply the prefab. Now, let's see, what other things do we have here? All of these, again, just Fuze. I'm just going to fix these up right now and mark these all explicitly private. Again, it doesn't matter if you put the word private or you don't, as long as you just keep it consistent. Personally, I like to put private in front of everything that's private, just like this. By the way, if you click, hold Alt, and drag, you can actually just paste along all the lines and add a space on all the lines, and done. So I like to keep these all, like I said, grouped up and separated and explicitly marked. So we want to keep all of the public things. Let's grab anything else. Oh, these are the lum parameters though. So these are separate for a different reason. So let's just look up here again. So we got public, vector, basic, fuse, force. Let's take a quick look at that. And here it's just reading it there. That seems kind of pointless. Let's take a quick look again. Basic fuse force is just a vector 2. So this, yeah, these should also be just private, really. I'm not going to go through and change all of these, but my sense is that all of these are editor fields that should just be marked as private and serialized field, and the only actual public thing on here is the instance, which should be a capital I. And it should probably not initially set itself to null because it's already null anyway. So right now we don't need to do that. What we should do though is change this to a getter with a private setter. So now nothing else can change the state of this instance, and he's using this as just a basic singleton. So if we look in Shift F12, you see that right here in start, he's setting the instance to this if it's null, and then destroying the instance or this object if it already exists. And that's just a common thing with singletons. If you have one and something else makes one spawn, you usually don't want that to happen, so you just call it destroy like that. So that's a fine pattern and all, but it's much better to make sure that you set that to private just so nothing else can break it. Now let's take a look at some of the methods. Let's see. So the start method is just initializing things. It looks like setting up the singleton. I'd probably move this into an awake. All of these get component calls, but nothing big stands out here. And starts, it's a little bit long, but it's reasonable. And the update method, again, let's get some spacing in here. Update method is perfect. It's calling count fuse parameters and update lum position offsets. Let's see what count fuse parameters is. Not much either. So relatively light update method. We do have some slightly longer impulse methods though. So let's take a look at that. I think if we go down here, you'll see he's using on touch down, more spacing. Definitely always put a space between your methods though. Just it makes it much easier to read and easier to separate just quickly. Like I said, it's of course you say like, oh yeah, that's easy to tell the difference. It is, but when you're looking at a glance real quick, it's hard to tell that that's actually two different things. So you want to be able to read your code as quick as possible and as painless as possible. So in on touch down, you see is going into this impulse fuse, and this thing is pretty big. Now, what's it doing here? First, it's count fuse out by direction. I don't know what that means. What does this mean? Position X equals transform dot position X and transform position Y. Okay, so we're getting a vector 2, and then we're getting the direction to. Okay, I see. So the point of this is to get the direction of the click. So here, probably just select this, hit control period, extract method, and just call this get direction from click to ball. Give it a nice explicit name for what we're trying to do. The next thing we're doing is self-fuse, and I'll get rid of this comment because that's confusing. Self-fuse force. I guess it's trying to calculate out the force required. Let's see, based off of force. Oh, the distance. Okay, so it looks like we're looking at 1 divided by the distance plus 0.01, and then if the force is too great, we set it back to 0 because they went to. Okay, interesting. So first thing I do here is definitely clean this part up. An if statement should almost never have the thing that it's doing on the same line, just because it's hard to read. And again, code quality is mostly about readability. You know, computer can read whatever. Humans have a much harder time, so make your code human readable first. So here we're figuring out the fuse force, and then we're getting a vector 2 for the impulse force. So what I do here is just select this chunk of code and extract it. Calculate impulse force. Seems good. Now it does have some out parameters, which I'm not a big fan of. What's direction getting used for? Ooh, yeah. So it's getting used for a couple things. But I'd rather have that here even with out parameters. Eventually, I think I'd probably refactor this a bit more and pull that out a little bit more. But I want to minimize or at least make the code super easy to follow along. So let's see. I don't know what Fuze by time is. Fuze by time. It's either 5 or 0. Count Fuze parameters. So what does this use? This is it's something used in the calculation here of the force. I'm not completely sure how it works, and I think that could probably be clarified up just by renaming that parameter, a little bit longer name that's more explicit on what it's actually used for and how it's used would help. Like I said, I could go through and figure it out, but you really want the code to be really obvious. You want to be able to go through and see exactly what's going on here. Now this particles control section, that's cool. It's good that it's commented. At least now we know what this is. But we should again extract it. Just call this what is this? Burst fuse particles. Fuse particles. There we go. Just give that another method. Just again, the goal here is to just simplify and shorten this down. And then here, so if hit fuse by time equals 5 or 0. Slightly cleaner way to do this and cut down, what are we at? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 8 lines of code to 1. We can say fuse by time equals, and then we say hit question mark 5 colon 0 and a semicolon. So what's that going to do? Essentially everything that's going on here. It's going to set the value of fuse by time to 5 if hit is true, and 0 if hit is false. So what it does is it evaluates the statement on the left side of that question mark. If it's true, you get the value right after the question mark. Otherwise, you get the value after the colon. So there we go. And just cut that down. And again, just keep shrinking the code and shrinking the method. The goal here is to make this very, very readable, very easy to figure out what's going on. So let's see. The next thing it's doing is using an event listener component and initializing an event by type. Event type is fuse, and it looks like it passes in a point and a quaternion and a vector. Well, let's just search for this event type enum. I don't see that referenced anywhere. Let's go into here. So it's just an enum in event manager of that type. I am not sure exactly how that's hooked up. It's possible that it's hooked up in the inspector somehow. Let's see, init event. What does it do? It finds an event container based on a physics material. Interesting. And an event type. What's that? Let's look at that. Interesting. So in this case, by the way, instead of using a list of event containers, you may want to just use a dictionary that just has a tuple or a type that's got a physics material and an event type. Or you may want to use a dictionary of dictionaries where you do like an event type at the top level and then a physics material. It'll make the lookup a little bit faster, especially for something like this where you're going through. Just using a dictionary will be a bit quicker and kind of not require you to write so much code there. Let's go back in though. So yeah, I still don't know what this. Let's go into an init event again. So init event gives us an event entity pool. And then what do those get used for? Let's see, let's go to the, oh, it's just a list of game objects. Oh, okay, interesting. Well, I don't want to dive too deep into there because I feel like I'm going to be digging into a hole for a long time and people may get a little bit bored. So let's take a look at one more class and then I'll just kind of wrap this up. Like I said, I think going through a full review of this would probably take a couple hours. It's a reasonably complex project that's doing quite a few things. So a full good code review would take a while. But I want to at least hit a couple other things. So let's look at... Well, here, let's go to our player ball again. And we've also got this lum holder, so let's open that up. So this is, I think, where some of that stuff that's on ball control should probably move to. And first, let's just clean up the formatting. Control K, Control D. And we've got a struct here at the top. Now, I'm not personally a fan of having multiple classes or structs in a single class usually. So I'd usually just move that to a different file like that. Just get it kind of cleaned up and have our class right at the top. And let's clean up those using statements. Again, just get a little bit more spacing in here and take a quick look. So this has all public fields except for a collider. Yeah, well, first let's just rearrange those so that they're grouped up together. Now, I'm guessing that all of these are set up. Let's see. Are any of these actually accessed outside the class, or are they all just public? By the way, if you just click on them and hit Shift F12 in Visual Studio, here, let's just dock that window. It'll show you all the references to things. So here you can see, okay, this one has lums is actually referenced outside of this class. And I'm guessing that's not something that yeah, it's getting set right here, true and false. And let's see, is this in an update? Yeah, so this one definitely can't be set in the inspector. So obvious fix for this, get set, done. So now it's no longer in the inspector and confusing. Although I'd hit F2 and make that capitalized. Move it down here, move that up. Now these other ones, assuming that they're not referenced outside this class, oh, ball is in range. This is, I think, the same case. So this one would also get changed to a property. Now remember, the public properties don't show up in the inspector, and it's good to really minimize the number of things that show up there. You really only want to show things in the inspector that are options that you can set. And sometimes you might want to put one there for debugging temporarily so you can see the state of a thing if you don't want to keep switching back and forth between debug and normal mode. But as soon as you're done debugging it, make the thing private or turn it into a property so it doesn't show up there and it doesn't confuse people. Otherwise, you know, people go through or you go through later and you're like, oh, I don't remember why I have this setting here. You know, is it actually a setting? Should I be using it? Whatever. And also, along that line, let me go back into ball control. One thing I'm a big fan of, like Fuze force. I don't know what that is exactly, but if there was a tooltip here, you know, does something. I don't know. If this was a more explicit, just a tooltip right there, it'll show up in the inspector, in the editor. Like here, let's save and jump back over. And it'll give you and other people a little bit more idea what the thing is doing. And it's not so much code, but it's kind of documenting the code without a comment. It's better than a comment because it actually, it helps designers and it's much more likely to stay accurate. So where was that? That was on our ball control. Was it Fuze length? Is it Fuze force? I don't know. It was one of these. Which one did I set it on? Now I have to look. Fuze force does something. Okay. So, oh, it's not set as serialized. I need to put it on one of these public ones right now. Now you can use it on the private ones that are serialized field too. I just happened to put it on a random private one because I wasn't paying enough attention there. But now you go. Now we've got the tooltip. Anyway, let's jump back over to the lum holder again. I just want to take another short look. Okay, so again, spacing and spacing. And these right here, these methods, I don't like at all. So let's take a look. If we look in update, we go through each lum slot, we set a follow point equal to the position plus the lum position offset for the slot. Okay, I think I get what that is. It's just saying, hey, this little ball that's following me should be at, you know, my position, the lum holder's position, plus whatever the offset is for that slot. And I think these slots are maybe defined in data somewhere. Let me see. Yeah, they're serialized. I assume they're getting set in data, although let's take a quick look. Oh no, they're getting done in code. That's right. In that offset. That's this method that we had. Update lum position offsets. And now that it's named better, since we renamed it, I'm starting to understand what it does. So this updates the offsets that the holder is using. Again, this update lum position offsets. What is this possibly doing that doesn't belong here? Yeah, this whole thing. Just take this big chunk of code, cut it, move it over to this lum holder, and get rid of all these comments. Add in these two fields. Now, right here, it looks like, oh, here, we don't need references to lum holder. Don't need that. Lum slots and holder. So I'm gonna undo this just because it's gonna take a little while. But this thing should be moved over, and all of these fields, if we go up to ball control, all of those fields up here that are related to it should also just get moved over. What the hell? Let's just move it. Cut. I'm just pretty sure this is going to break some other things. So it'll take a little while of debugging going through. Oh, what do you know? If it actually builds, I'll be surprised. If it builds, and oh, okay. Let's say like then it was super obvious it should have moved. Oh, okay. It's just the initialization of these things. Cut those, save, go over to here, and let's just add a new method. I don't want to shove all this into start, so say private void initialize lum objects. It should get a better name, but for now we'll keep it simple. There we go, and we'll call that in start. Now let's see. Oh, look at this. We are so close to. There we go. We just moved that into the right class. Now, I'm not 100% sure that lum holder is the correct class for it, but I think it seems like the best bet. It's definitely better than ball control. Let's jump back down, though, one more time. The last thing I want to talk about, because I'm already at 30 minutes. Last thing I want to talk about was this check if ball in range. Check if have lums. Both of these, first off, they're a little bit confusing in the name. So it's doing a check if. It's not returning anything. It's not saying really like what it does. And if you look at it, you see it's actually toggling an interaction collider and a balls in range variable. Still not sure exactly why or what it's doing that for. Let's see. Let's search for balls in range. If it's interactive and has balls in range, then it will send them to the holder. What about here and here? Interesting. So I think what I'd do is just rename this to update ball is in range. Then that's really what it's doing. It's updating that ball is in range. Or maybe I just call it calculate and update. Because it's really doing the calculation to figure out if it's in range and then setting a variable here. One other thing though, like this, tags, I hate tags. I've talked about it a couple times before. The big problem here is that if a tag breaks, it's very hard to tell what the problem is. It's hard to track down and find the issue. You're not going to get a compiler issue if somebody deletes the tag named ball. You're not going to get a compiler issue or an obvious issue if somebody removes the tag from the ball. This code's just not going to work and it's going to silently fail. So what I prefer to do is look at this ball collider and oh, this is happening in an update. Even then, at this case, I'd still probably just do ball collider here dot get component. What is it? Ball control. So check to see if that is not equal to null. So that's just going to check to make sure that this is actually a ball. It's the ball, it's not the tag. Again, I know people like using tags sometimes. I've just run into problems with them enough times that I kind of try to abandon them, avoid them, just not use them. It's just way too easy to break things and spend a day just trying to figure out what the hell went wrong, and then find out it's a tag on some object somewhere deep in a hierarchy that nobody realized was being set except for the one person who had made that change 6 months before. And yeah, anyway, turns into a mess. So a little bit more code, always better in my opinion. And then I do the same thing here for this check if have lums, just whatever, call this calculate if we have lums and update has lums. Yeah, something like that. I don't know. I'd probably spend a couple minutes just coming up with a good name for this, but I definitely want to name it something really obvious for what it's doing. Although I don't know necessarily that we even need to be doing this, because really the lum slots, where is this at? Whenever we're actually attaching these, we should probably just be setting the number of them that are attached to increase or decrease or something, or just toggle a boolean there for whether or not we have them. So when we add one, we just check and say, hey, it's definitely true now. When we remove, we just check to see if we're out and then set it to false, instead of doing this in an update. Not a big deal, but it would help. It'd help simplify the code a little bit. And I like that you're doing some gizmos. That's awesome. So gizmos are very cool. Anyway, I don't want to tear into the code too much more. Like I said, I just want to do a kind of a light, quick review, and I went on for half an hour, just kind of going on and on. First, again, I just want to say that I thought the game was really fucking cool. It's pretty. It's nice. It plays well. I definitely see it turning into a complete full-fledged game. The code, while it has some issues, it's functional. It seems to perform okay. Didn't really run into too many big problems. I would definitely go about just refactoring things, renaming anything that's not really obvious. So don't be afraid to use long names. Now, obviously, if it gets obnoxiously long and you can't read it in a second, it's bad. But it's much better to have. I'll take a long name that I can't read in a second over a short name that I can read instantly and have no idea what it is any day. So ideally, we want to go somewhere in the middle, though. 4 or 5 words at most. Anyway, I do that. Split some things out, and definitely, like I said, I need to look at some more of these classes to really give great feedback. But it's look for spots where a class is doing more than one thing, where it's violating that single responsibility principle, and pull those things out. Just yank them out, make a new class. It doesn't have to be a mono behavior. It can just be a class that does some calculation or something. I mean, a lot of the methods in here, from what I noticed, what I saw, could probably just be static methods on a static class that have a zero state at all, that are just doing some kind of a calculation, passing in data. Or they could just be smaller methods on smaller classes that are a little bit more specific, like the lum stuff. You've got a couple different classes already here. Lum holder, lum control. I love the size of this class. I don't know if it's used, but I love the size there. So yeah, just work on splitting things more, and also very good that you're using object pooling. That's great. Pooling is the way to go for this kind of stuff. Spawning lots of things, gonna pool. Anyway, I'll quit rambling on. I plan to do a couple more of these. I got a good number of submissions that came in from email. I might send out a request in a couple weeks, just asking for more to go through. But if you're interested in code reviews and just having somebody talk about your code and tell you the problems with it, at least problems I see personally, or just give you some feedback, let me know. Just drop a comment below, and I'll maybe do these more often if they're popular and if people find some value in them. All right, that's all I got for today. So thanks for watching. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. All the fun YouTube stuff. And have a great day.